This is the Creative Boom Podcast. What does it feel like to be immersed in a scene documenting the rise of the UK's most important musical genre since punk? Simon Wheatley is an acclaimed photographer who did just that, capturing grime culture as it happened. His subsequent book, Don't Call Me Urban, The Time of Grime, was released in 2010, offering a fascinating insight into that world through music portraiture, reportage and architectural imagery. It shot to the top of the book charts and was immediately hailed as a classic of British documentary photography. Since then, Simon has continued his work around the grime scene, also as a filmmaker, and he's currently editing for a more comprehensive book that will cover the genre's evolution up to the present day. Amongst Simon's career highlights have been a spectacular spell with the Magnum agency, producing groundbreaking work from the French suburbs after the riots of 2005, and being selected as the worldwide ambassador for the launch of Leica's legendary M-series camera in 2006. In 2018, he was invited to be the in-house photographer at London's Abbey Road studios. Over the past decade, Simon has divided his time between London and India, the land of his maternal ancestry, where he has continued his photography and studied yogic philosophy and music. He also carries out workshops worldwide and is developing a course of photography that seeks to combine physical, mental and spiritual development. A self-proclaimed outsider, I wanted to know more about his childhood, moving between the varying cultures of Singapore and England, and how that experience shaped him as a person. What was it like to attend a Surrey boarding school where he didn't really fit in, and what led him to documentary photography, finding a sense of belonging in London? There's a lot we cover. It's a humbling conversation with a gentle, curious soul that today embraces his many quirks and traits, something we can all aspire to. Stay with us. Wouldn't it be great if you could turn your iPad into a drawing tablet by mirroring your favourite desktop apps? Astropad Studio does just that. It's a smart app for professional artists designed to give the flexibility of an Apple Pencil combined with the full desktop power of software like Photoshop and Illustrator. One happy customer is London artist Muragaya.
I've used Astropad for so many years and I've tried and tested it against all of the competitors, and it is by far the best drawing app for this purpose.
If, like Muragaya, you're ready to take your creative workflow to the next level, you can start your 30-day free trial of Astropad Studio today. Plus save 10% on your first year when you enter the promo code BOOM at checkout. That applies to whether you opt for a monthly or an annual subscription. Visit astropad.com to get started. I'm going towards the microphone because my editor keeps telling me off for being too far away from it. So I'm like, okay, how do I do this and feel relaxed?
So these
still?
These are now superfluous, or should we?
Yeah, no, they're fine. You can just leave those.
Just to double up.
Yeah,
it makes me feel more important. I got two mics, it's like a press conference.
Yeah, well, I used to do those long ago. You had to sort of fight for a space on the table in front of the kind of guests, which was quite, nerve-wracking for a 21-year-old, 22-year-old.
Yeah, but you're tall, you can manage.
Well...
Did that help with scrums?
It kind of did. You could definitely sort of... But the awkward thing was you had to sort of scramble on your, hands and feet and your knees, and shovel in, because obviously all the TV crews would be there as well. So you'd have to kind of just... say sorry, and I'm very clumsy and awkward anyway, so I'd always be tripping up over things and trying to sort of shove a microphone in front of whoever it was, whether it was a football team announcing a new player, or a kind of a police conference with some poor dear parents requesting for people to come forward for information. It was quite a shallow kind of dark profession, really, news journalism. Shows you how the world works very quickly. I mean, you grow up very quickly, I think, when you do something like that in your 20s. Wouldn't you say? Did you have a similar experience when you were in news journalism? Going around with your camera for Magnum, was it?
Well, that wasn't really... I was inclined towards, say, topical matters as a photographer, definitely. News journalism was something earlier. I did manage 1 month for the London newspaper group before I got the sack, actually.
Oh, right. Nice.
I worked for London newspaper group. It's in West London. I got a company car. Mum was delighted. Suddenly, this hopeless son of hers who'd come out of university with this sudden passion for photography and taken over the bathroom, the spare bathroom, and made a darkroom, but
Nice.
there was no income. I'd get, I don't know, £15 for a job or something with the local newspaper, and then suddenly I had a salary. It was like £10,000 a year. This was '96, so I mean, my parents lived nearby. I don't know, like maybe 12 miles away, so I could use the company car. I had a car. After a month, I got the sack, and it wasn't very good for her. But they didn't want someone who had their own mind. And the person who was running the newspaper had risen through advertising sales.
Right.
And he was a real 80s man with
Quite conservative, maybe?
Yeah, but working class type. Thatcherite, I think.
Oh, gosh, right.
Who'd,
Say no more.
Yeah, he's got himself like a Mercedes, but a white Mercedes, but like the entry level 190 or something, and
with leather seats and smell of
I
tobacco.
didn't bother looking inside, but that was his car. I'd see it there, and he had no idea of, should we say, a more, well, you could say intellectual approach to photography.
Sure.
Yeah, and I didn't last long. I'm not good at being told what to do, I suppose. I like working with other creatives. It's not that I'm autocratic in that way, but when someone who doesn't really understand what I'm about at all.
Yeah.
I was young. I mean, I was 25, I think.
25.
Yeah, 25, and the first day, the first assignment was, there was some school that was closing in West London, and it was a nursery, and it meant a lot of inconvenience for local people who were now to go 7 miles. And I remember this was a time of the Yugoslavian conflict.
Yeah, I remember that.
I remember there was a woman, I think she was from Croatia, with her child, and
Gosh.
I was a refugee. I was photographing her and her child, looking a bit uncertain about things, and then I saw 2 black girls sitting on the floor with books open and someone next to them. And so I made pictures that I felt would be touching in some way and reflect the story as I saw it. But this is my first assignment, and the journalist I was with, first day, she said to me, "Oh, make sure you get a group picture." I said, "I don't know."
That sounds so crass.
What do I do a group picture for? No, you have to get one. I said, No, Simon, I'm telling you, this policy, you have to get one. So I left 3 or 4 pictures on the end of the roll and made sure everyone, hi, cheese.
You're kidding me.
Got that picture. Got back to the darkroom, processed the film. I processed it myself, as we did. That was the local newspaper photographer back in the day. You process your own film in the darkroom there.
Wow.
Yeah. It wasn't the Guardian where you'd have a whole lab doing it for you. And then chose the pictures that I liked, sent them down to the news desk, rejected.
Oh, hate
they
that.
said, the word came out, say, we want the group picture. And I refused to print it.
Good for you.
I refused my first day because I said, no, that's the story. I'm here to tell stories. So I didn't get off to the best start. And in the end, someone else, the other photographer, printed it for me just to keep the peace.
Gosh.
Because the idea was from the managing director that whoever's in the picture would buy the paper.
Yeah.
So you're going to get
Soul
15.
crushed.
You're going to get 15 sales of the paper if you get everybody in it. So that was a policy. Whenever you go to school or somewhere, always do a group picture. That's how they saw photography. So that didn't last long, no. And then there were other things. Like I remember there was somewhere just off nearby here, actually, just off Bond Street, there was a nightclub there on one of those side streets, I think Duke Street, where someone had been killed outside. And it was just a door to a small nightclub. And I thought, well, I could go and photograph the door. But I parked my car. I waited for the right spot to come available. And I parked the car in such a way that I could shoot from inside the car. So the car was all dark inside. And I had the wing mirror. I had a lens that got the wing mirror in. And in the wing mirror, I had a black shot in black and white, and had a black car, because the white door, had a black car going on a blurry, I think I shot at 30th of a second, so it was a blur, just to create this sense of mystery. So I made a picture there. And when I got called down to the editor's room with his reasons for sacking me, one of the reasons was that I'd supposedly been too lazy to get out of the car to make a picture. When I'd taking a picture of him inside a car. That's how they'd seen it. They thought I was too lazy to get out.
Oh, goodness.
Rather than because I had that artistic inclination. So obviously it wasn't meant to be.
It wasn't, but that's a good thing, because look where you are now and look at the career you've had. And I suppose that kind of like little insight into the news world and how it operated, and realizing that actually the thing you're more interested in is is actually capturing a reality rather than this kind of weird, polished, unrealistic version. This, because obviously perfection doesn't exist. But I think, or would you disagree with that?
I ask that question when I run a workshop. It's always the first question I ask the participants. It warms people up, and it's interesting to get an idea of who's who and who's got something to say, who's maybe a bit philosophical in the class. It's just a bit of an icebreaker.
Yeah.
It's also a principle that I adhere to in photography. My thesis, I suppose, which I will reveal when everyone's had their say, is that perfection is a state of permanent being or permanent attainment. And the moment that you think you've got it, you've lost it.
Wow. So it's a very divine kind of instant thing, which we can't really sort of grasp.
It's just, as I say, it's a constant state of being, a constant state of attainment, that you're always striving towards that. And that's your in a way your policy.
Have you ever had any of those moments where you've just thought, yeah, this is it, and then it's just gone?
It's there. I think it's there, and I think I would say that all your photographs that you edit and choose to exhibit have to have that perfection. But there's many that stay on the contact sheet that never make it off there. To actually get those. And then within perfection, they're the ones that are really like you're really top class ones, and there's not many of those.
Yeah. It's taking a lot of images to find the right kind of ones that, because it's not just about taking that shot, is it? It's about the feeling you had at the time, the atmosphere of the room, perhaps something that you kind of picked up on that maybe others didn't. It's a real poetry, I personally think. Yeah,
I've spoken about this recently as well, about photography needing to be poetry nowadays as well. I mean, if you look at the old like Life magazine photographers like Eugene Smith and their approach, I mean, obviously Eugene Smith did also make some like wonderfully poetic images, but his approach, if you look at his contact sheets, it's very, he documents everything, and the way that Life magazine would, very studiously he documents things, and the way that Life magazine would print his stories was with lots of these images showing how the story unfolds. But nowadays, in the visual world we live in, where people's visual literacy is attuned to the moving image, I would say video has got that prosaic approach covered. I'm not saying that video can't also be poetic, but take yourself back to when you started in journalism and you went on the BBC website, or a bit later, of course, BBC website, when that first got going, then you clicked on a picture and it was a still picture, and now it goes straight to video stream because of fast broadband connections. So especially young people, as I say, their visual literacy is attuned to moving image. So how does photography survive in that context? Yeah. This new context. And I think photography has to be poetic in order to survive. It has to be poetic. It is poetry, photography now. I had got that sense when I was reading your book this morning, this wonderful thing here, Liberal Limits, and in Amsterdam, and it actually made me cry. I read the whole thing from cover to cover and looked at all the photographs, and I was really immersed in the story that you told. And I don't want to obviously ruin it for everyone, but there's this sort of protagonist called Cisco. And at the end, am I allowed to say? Yeah, absolutely, Cisco, yeah. So at the end, you realise that this big character who a lot of people loved and would go to this place, what was it called again? The Flying Pig, the youth hostel. The
Flying Pig, and all these magical times where people came together. Well,
magical, I don't know. Flying Pig
But then you kind of, you showed the kind of darker, the flip side.
Yeah, it's very commercial.
And how, like, the next day everybody be kind of like coming to and reality would set in.
Well, Cisco and that was after his 25th birthday mushroom trip. And the next day when you're dealing with your realization, just sitting there at the bar in silence. And Cisco and I had this telepathy about us as well, and that we didn't know what each other was thinking. And he just took his afro off and checked out, and everyone was saying, "Rah, hey, that's Cisco. Hey, where's your afro? Hey, is that you, Cisco? Hey, are you from Cuba? Are you really from Cuba?" And then he just, which was his thing, he used to joke about it. There's nothing malevolent about his, what was it, ruse or bullshit or whatever. I was from Uruguay, he was from Cuba. We just had fun, and it was all part of, I guess, tripping out in Amsterdam, wasn't it? And walking around with a ghetto blaster around town and stuff. It was wonderful. But he just turned around and shook his head. And no, he'd had enough.
I have to read a bit of the extract because it really upset me. It really got to me because it had so much meaning behind it. It signalled the kind of end of youth. It signalled the kind of end of the party.
I felt.
And it also kind of felt really bittersweet because it was like, we're not here for very long, and does life have meaning? All these kind of big questions came to mind, and I just got very choked up by this.
Thank you.
It was beautiful. Eventually, a voice called out, "Hey, Cisco, are you from Cuba?" He turned to face a group of wide-eyed college kids awaiting his words, returning their puzzled gaze with a compassionate smile that deepened as he contemplated his response. It was a sad moment when Cisco finally shook his head. I could feel that since yesterday we were that little bit older. It's just choking me up now.
Well, that means a lot, man, that my words have that effect.
It did. It's beautiful. And again, reading some of the words from Lost Dreams, what was the sort of talented lad in there who'd spent 5 years in prison?
Oh, Glade. Yeah.
His words talking about keeping his brother off the streets.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, I guess the thing I'm trying to get at is when you go out in the world and you sort of work for these people who are presenting this kind of image of the world, but you yourself have got a creative version that you want to bring to the fore, and it might be more kind of realistic than what the, say, old 80s journalist the editor might be trying to sort of water down, or not even aware that this other world exists, or too lazy to even consider that there are other people with different perspectives. Do you know what I'm trying to say? I guess there's this huge generation of people who are just forgotten, overlooked, and they sort of tell the story. They're the narrative. They control the narrative, and you have the power to sort of bring their stories as a photographer, when you move away from that world, to the fore and turn it into poetry and give them a voice. And I think that's so powerful.
Well, I think news journalism is, the problem with news journalism is it's impatient, and you can't really go deep enough with it, even if you work for a magazine. I mean, I missed that golden era of Life magazine, and even the 70s and the supplements when... I mean, I did do work in Holland there was a magazine where they'd give you 14 pages, and it was, I suppose, the equivalent of The Guardian, NRC Handelsblad, and they had a magazine once a month and on a Saturday, I think, and they'd give you 14 pages to tell a story. But that's only 14 pages. It's not that long. And I think I've moved towards book format, I think, from actually being in Amsterdam and being away from that hustle of being in London and having to do all kinds of things for money and do... I did work long term, and I started in Lamberfork in 98, and in 99 I moved to Amsterdam, and I'd come back once every 6 weeks for a week to London and work on my projects here as well. But I had arts funding for a story about the Moroccan youth after 9/11, and this was a story that people would say could never be told. A lot of people had tried, and there was too much hatred between the Dutch and the Moroccans, and there was a lot of, obviously, because education levels were low. They didn't know the difference between the Sun and the Guardian. A journalist is a fucking journalist, as far as they were concerned. So you go into a Moroccan area and you get your camera broken up, you get beaten up. They're tough guys.
Yeah.
You know? But I got this arts funding. I remember waking up the next day and it was 10,000 euros. And this was 2001. I got this, and I remember end of 2001, I woke up and suddenly, okay, cool. I don't need to go chasing that invoice and that and this and that. I can just go to East Amsterdam, just hang out in one of these coffee shops, not the central Amsterdam ones, but one of the ones when you walk in and they're looking at you and say, who the F are you, you know? But I could just go there and get myself a coffee in there and just like be and not have to hustle. And that definitely affected in a very, very positive way my approach to photography, having that funding and being able to breathe. And from having that in Holland, it made me very patient in the way that I operated, and that translated to what I was doing in London. And then later, when I went to Magnum and I found myself in the French banlieue, where also that had been a big story for 20 years by the time I was there. It had been a big story since the mid-'80s. Yeah. And no one had actually photographed it well. And
it's difficult to get into these places.
Yeah, I had this kind of madness about me, I think, when I was in my late 20s and I think it partly came about from having been unsuccessful, and I found myself on the council estates in London just as an experiment, coming up with this photography there, these early pictures, going over to Amsterdam, went to Harlem in 99 as well in New York. And I was also attracted to, because I'm a graduate in American and Latin American studies as well. So I was very attracted to Harlem. My whole interest in music, my whole interest in I say grime comes from interest in hip hop. Yeah. And my interest in hip hop comes from a study of one of my, I suppose, majors at university was civil rights movement. Right. So hip hop was very inspiring. And then when I was in America too, there was that Tribe Called Quest, that 92. I think Low End Theory was my first album I bought.
Same.
Yeah? Oh, really? Wow. That's amazing. That is really amazing. And I mean, I was thinking about Tribe Called Quest also, you got that jazz influence. I think Ron Carter's on that album, isn't he? The bass player. And
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so that's what interested me about hip hop. It was the voice of dispossessed Black America, but not like jazz, which in its origins was very melancholic. Of course, hip hop had come through the filter of, you could say, funk and disco, and it was post civil rights, so it was suddenly had a power to it and an attitude where these guys were saying, well, you know, we've got a mic, we're going to say whatever we want to.
Yeah.
And originally hip hop's interesting as well because it was a conscious movement. And for me, that early hip hop is really, it's not just catchy and bouncy, it's interesting socially, politically, and then of course it kind of goes into the gangster stuff, doesn't it, in the late 80s, early 90s, and which you could maybe attribute to Reaganomics. I don't know. Probably there is a correlation there.
There was quite a lot of kind of, you know, aggressive stuff, wasn't there? I think I was always more drawn to the kind of jazzy stuff. The more kind of, you know, the Tribe Called Quest and the Gangstar and the...
De La Soul were big in Manchester.
Oh,
my first term at Manchester, there was one hall of residence, and that was all they played. There was like that 3 Feet High and Rising album. Yeah. They just played that, and that was, of course, a lot of fun.
Yeah. The Academy. And
Academy came a bit later. Academy, I think it was like 93, Academy 1993. Academy wasn't there the first year I was there.
I think you're a bit older than me, but
I
love that you...
Do you want to rub it in?
Yeah, I am. I will, constantly. I'm a charming person, what can I say?
Yeah, so that's what got me. And then grime, of course. Grime is an offshoot of hip hop, 100%. Yeah. You know, whatever people say about, it's a UK boys, we got 140 BPM, we're different and everything. Fine. But culturally, it's the same. It's come from the same culture. All these big grime MCs. I used to see people's bedroom walls, and there'll be a picture in the grime book that I'm working on now, this anthology of 2 decades.
Yeah.
and there'll be a picture of bedroom walls there where you can see 50 Cent and whoever. It's not like it is now, where it's UK rappers, MCs who run things in London.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody else actually about this, and we sort of agreed that actually I think the London sound is far cooler now than the East Coast sound of the sort of 90s. Would you agree?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's cool. I don't know what's cool.
Cool.
I don't
What
really,
is cool?
Yeah,
Gosh.
I don't really know what's
Sorry.
cool. I was, but I hear you.
Lowered the tone.
No, no. It's a relevant word to use.
I think it's more popular. That's what I'm trying to say.
It is, definitely. That's what you're trying to say, and I got that. But I remember XL Records. A couple of people around at my studio, maybe I think 3 years ago, and they were looking at my archive of East London because they wanted material for Wiley's album, and they didn't end up using any. They just they made it very scrapbooky and took all kinds of like pictures. But anyway, so they spent the morning at mine, and one of the people told me that it was very hard. It had become very hard to sell an American rapper in the UK.
Right. Interesting. That's crazy. Gosh, I'm really sort of shocked by that. But that's brilliant because you were there when it all sort of started, when it came to the fore. Did you know that you were in the midst of something that was, kicking off, or was it serendipitous? You were just there at the time, and
yeah, people asked me that the other day. I gave the launch for Lost Dreams, and someone who's obviously a huge like hip hop fan and everything, he just got up at the back and was like clapping his hand. Gee, man, that was like great. You were around 2004. Was that like being in the Bronx in the late 70s? Did you get that feeling? And I was like, no, not really. I'm really sorry to disappoint you, but in retrospect, having said that, in retrospect now, I realized that I should have realized what was going on.
Yeah.
But it's very difficult at the time because, look, grime raves are being closed down by the police. No one was really making any money apart from Wiley selling stuff out of his car.
Yeah.
I remember being at some Roll Deep event and they were trying to sell mixtapes to the crowd.
Mixtapes?
To the crowd. This is before you had their 2 number ones 3 or 4 years later. And who could have told? But there was an energy around, which isn't around anymore. And I think Lost Dreams is really an attempt to reflect upon that energy when the youth clubs were the underground, and the streets were just popping with ciphers everywhere, stairwells. People were spitting. Everyone had their phone out, and yeah, you just don't see it these days now.
You were obviously welcomed into that kind of community, and people were comfortable having their photographs taken, I presume. I can imagine it might be a bit more difficult today, as we've sort of discussed prior to this podcast. People are sort of very conscious now of their faces being sort of, burnt into permanency that could end up on the web forever, and goodness knows what they're up to. But, how do you feel about that, the changing sort of attitudes that, say, Instagram have brought along? And it's quite sad, really. It
is very sad. I mean, to actually be a street photographer now, I've got another book coming called Silverlink, which it's a book about a train line that used to go from Richmond in the west up over North London. So it would go up to Willesden, Hampstead. It would go through then through Kentish Town, Camden, down Islington, and then around through Hackney, Dalston, Stratford, and down to the Docklands. Now it stops at Stratford, but it used to go to these forgotten parts of Docklands, really run-down stations. And I was in '98. I'd come back from. I got a lucky break. I got this Time Out Travel Photography Award, and
great.
So I came back in '96. I went to Chiapas, and I went to in Mexico, and I went to Suharto's, last days of Suharto in Indonesia, and came back with this color work. I showed it to people here, and picture editors would say, "Oh, well, it's very easy to shoot color over there." Oh, okay, thanks. Which is true to a certain extent, but you still have to make pictures, of course. And then, So I looked for a local challenge, and I found it on this. I just used to look at this map, and that's really interesting, that train line. And I've always been a bit of a traveller, so that train line gave me somewhere to explore within London where I was living. I never knew North London because my roots are in the south of the city.
Right.
So I just threw myself into that, and with that story, what was the question? What did I get to this? This is a long story.
I'm so transfixed now. I'm trying to think. Yes, it was about how we feel, how you feel.
Oh
now
yeah. And I would photograph strangers on trains.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm very lucky with this work because I'll be putting this out as a book soon as well. Silverlink. Silverlink was the name of the private franchise that took over from when British Rail sold.
Yeah.
And what's very interesting is I've been very lucky in photography. I never knew crime was going to happen. I never knew what I was walking into in Amsterdam, living in hostels, and realised that I was seeing this era when Holland tired of the liberal image, because Holland is not at all liberal. It's tolerant, but tolerance is a kind of bit of a dangerous word because it implies an intolerance. Where do you cross the line? Yeah. I was lucky with that. I've been lucky in India the last 10 years, and I've seen this philosophical crisis in India where people have I suppose lost their soul in India. This rush for the West and consumerism and this loss of their own identity, which is I've seen, especially with young people in India. And with this train line, in looking at it, editing it, I shot it all on Kodachrome, the original color slide film. And looking at it, I realized that it's actually a story of rail privatization because it's actually my document of the Blair years, because I started in 98 and I finished in 2010. And the Blair years, if we include the Brown bit on the end of that, is 97 to 2010.
Yeah.
And rail privatization was the last. It was the final frontier for the Tories. Thatcher thought it was a step too far. She thought it was too controversial. It's hard to imagine now when you come down on a private train from Manchester.
I have indeed, yeah.
It's hard to imagine. Everything's private. But Thatcher, after all she had done with miners and everything, she thought, I can't believe it, but she thought the railways was a step too far. However, the idea got resuscitated in the Major administration, and Labour, or should I say New Labour, promised that if they got in, they would repeal that legislation.
I remember.
The Railways Act of 93. And they didn't.
No.
Instead, they intensified that process. And the North London line was a really shitty line. Everything was late. It was an indictment upon the privatization of the railways. And I documented that for 12 years. So,
12 years.
Yesterday, on and off, not every day. I might do
1
week, 1 year. I might do 1 month, 1 year.
Yeah, but it's a project, isn't it? It's a long project.
But I've got my assistant now. He's trying to photograph. He's a young Bangladeshi guy in Tower Hamlets. He goes to outside the mosque. Everyone's shouting at him. He goes to Chris Street Market. Everyone's shouting at him. And yesterday I got to Whitechapel Station and I looked at the platform, and it was quite a busy platform. I looked around and I thought to myself, now, everywhere I saw confrontation. Everywhere I imagined if I photographed them, confrontation. Not that I wanted to, I only had a phone with me. There, confrontation. There, no. There, everywhere I looked, yeah. Now, back in the day, although it was many days, over 12 years, but previously, I would once in a while obviously run into some problems. There were people who didn't like being photographed. There was, this is like Northeast London and East London. There's lots of asylum seekers. People don't really get it that you're going to photograph. It's a pretty weird thing to do, walk around photographing a train line when you haven't come from, say, liberal arts-based culture.
Yeah,
So I looked around and I didn't see any situations that I would be comfortable photographing. I just don't want to do it anymore because of that aggro.
Yeah. I suppose there's so many cameras now as well. That's the thing I noticed the more I come down here over the last decade, the cameras are everywhere. And I get really resentful of them. I look over my shoulder and I'm like, oh, there's another one. I feel like we're constantly being monitored and watched, and you've got all this facial recognition now. I don't think people overthink it in that respect. I think it's just genuinely social media and the web has just made us all, I suppose, at risk of having ourselves plastered everywhere. There's the kind of issue that Instagram had when people were like willingly posting their own images of themselves and then that image would show up in a sort of advert, you know. So there's, I feel like everything is just sort of being thrown up in the air, and things are still being figured out in terms of just the photography and the video content. I mean, how do you feel about TikTok?
I haven't been there yet. I've heard the name TikTok. Reminds me, there used to be noodles in Penang when I was a child. And I used to go to Penang 3 times a year. I live in Singapore. My mum's family were living in Penang. And we'd go, and there was, in the evening, someone would come by on a pedal cart, cycle past a house, the row of houses we were on, and have TikTok, and TikTok was like noodles. That's how I used to love them. So that's all I know about TikTok.
Your face you're recounting that story. Was it a lovely time of your life?
Sister, I should say. Yeah. Yeah, it really, that's deep for me. And in India, I was in India for lockdown, and I've been writing a novel trying to make sense of my life. And my mother comes from a very big family, and they came from pre-partition East Bengal, now India. But my ancestral relatives have all moved to Calcutta post-partition.
Right.
And I think even before partition, we left in 23. So my parents had lived through the Japanese occupation. My mother lived through Japanese occupation.
Gosh.
And very interesting, we were treated very favorably by the Japanese too, being Indians. Two of my uncles were in the Japanese-sponsored army that attempted to liberate India through Burma. And one of my uncles was really, he could never sleep with the door open.
Wow.
And he never ate chicken because it smelled of the dead bodies. He saw a lot, I think. Yeah.
Did they ever speak about it?
No, he'd never speak about it. He couldn't speak about it.
No.
It was like
too
a
many
family
horrors.
secret. Yeah. And so I'm dealing with that because I'm very interested in the tragedy of Japan, actually, and that whole era of Japanese prominence, you could say, in the world, and the failure of Japan to live up to its ideals. I'm fascinated by that because it's a wonderful culture, and there would have definitely been an idealism around the concept of Asia for the Asians, because Japan did not go the way of China and India, which fell to the colonial powers. Japan was never colonized.
No.
The Dutch tried to get in first. The Americans tried to get in later, but the Japanese wouldn't have it. And they, of course, ended up behaving as badly as the European powers in Korea and China and other parts of Asia, but particularly those are the most famous or infamous examples of Japanese brutality.
Yeah, it's I went to Tokyo and went to one of I think it was their Imperial War Museum, and reading their sort of perspective of just the Second World War as one small example was really interesting. Not the perspective we'd been taught in schools.
Or films, of course, where we see the kamikaze, or I think, what's it called? Totokai pilots. I think they call it Totokai. I don't know the pronunciation, but it's spelled like that. And we see them as these crazed lunatics, like flying into some deck of an American aircraft carrier in a Hollywood film. But actually, these people, I've been reading a book about it, and they were taken from like very elite schools. Many of them were Marxists, and the only way that they could deal with their destiny, and if they knew where they were going, because they were flying planes with half full tanks, you couldn't get back. You had to just crash your plane into there. And the reason it happened was because American radar was so good by the end of World War II, and Japan was surrounded, so they couldn't hit them with missiles. So they tried this with on a small scale policy, and it worked. So they made it their strategy, and the only way that these pilots could deal with it was because they wanted to defeat both Japan and America. They wanted to defeat the rulers in Japan, and they didn't want anyone to win. They were very philosophical. They were into particularly the German philosophers I've read. But they would speak several European languages because you can imagine the education system in Japan, how rigorous it was. Very interesting. So, yeah, there's lots and lots of themes. I wrote 200,000 words and I've got to make sense of it. But I've gone deep into my childhood and the tragedy of our migration to Bengal, because I've learned from being in Kolkata that I descend from a very musical family. They're very renowned in Kolkata as musicians.
Wow.
And there was one of my cousins who is closer to my mother's age than mine. My mother's one of 18 children. Yeah.
Gosh.
Yes.
My great-grandmother she had 11 children.
Well,
so
that's just over halfway.
Just beaten me,
Yeah. You haven't got a substitutes bench like we have.
No, but she did have the world's heaviest triplets.
Wow, that's not quite something.
And nobody's beaten her. I think it was 22 pounds.
Oh.
Not each.
Something for your mantelpiece.
Well, it's kind of there.
Trophy.
She was amazing. It was just the way it was, wasn't it? You had big families.
Yeah. I've got this cousin who was very talented. I remember listening to him playing the piano, his own competition. But he was very strange because he's 20 years older than me or so more. As a child growing up, I used to find him quite scary. He's very odd, and he'd drift in and out of the shadows to come down the stairs and poke his head around the door and look, and it's very Borun. And I found out later that I remember he ended up in an asylum. I remember going to visit my mother because everybody had a favourite. We all had a favourite mushi, which is auntie, or mama, which is uncle. And my mother was his favourite. He was her favourite. Not that it excludes anyone else, but we had our particular mushi mama somehow, like a second parent. And she took me to be with him one day to visit him. I think I must have been about 7. I can vaguely remember it. And it was an asylum. I didn't know at the time. But he ended up mad because he was very talented in music. He had a scholarship to somewhere in France in the 60s, late 60s. And his father, he was also brilliant academically. And his father wanted him to be a doctor. But he was very good at science too. But he was set on music. That was his love. And he wasn't able to take the scholarship because you have to get to France, you have to pay upkeep, and there was no way of doing that with the money the family didn't have. So he ended up going mad, and so he's a key character in the book. And now, having spent 10 years in Kolkata, I can really understand Borun in a way that no one else in the family can, because I know that if he'd have been born in Kolkata, he'd have been a great musician, no doubt. But in the end, Malaysia is such a commercial place that has got nothing to offer. People just like watch Premier League football and eat, and and go to shopping malls. There's no art. I found it myself. Like when I turned up at 24 years old, I went to Malaysia to get to know my roots for a year, and I turned up and it was like, well, what's Simon doing? And mother was in tears, because I had the elite education in England too, because no one else had that in my family, boarding school and all that. And is he a lawyer now, or has he taken his exams for law school and all that? But no. What does he do? I said, well, photographer. What? And for them, a photographer means you might as well be a taxi driver. It means you're some Chinaman with a studio doing passport pictures, maybe a wedding once in a while. There's no thought of like Sebastião Salgado, the Brazilian photojournalist, who's very influential for me not so much in terms of his photographs, but as a phenomenon as a person, because I studied Latin American studies. I was at university in Brazil. He'd been exiled by the military government, who I studied about that was my dissertation. So, he inspired me in that way. And he was obviously, very, very brilliant PhD economist. And that was the approach I was coming in on. And they didn't get it.
When it comes to the very tools we use to be creative, sometimes they don't quite stretch enough. If you're a professional artist with an iPad, you'll know only too well some of the limitations you face when trying to make art. Astropad Studio is something that will definitely spark your interest. It's the ultimate iPad app that's designed to give the flexibility of an Apple Pencil combined with the full desktop power of software like Illustrator or Photoshop. Sound good? There's a 30-day free trial of Astropad Studio waiting for you today. plus save 10% on your first year when you enter the promo code BOOM at checkout. That applies to whether you opt for a monthly or an annual subscription. Just go to astropad.com to get started. I suppose when your world is a bit smaller, when you haven't had the chance to travel and meet people who completely are the opposite to yourself, then it wouldn't really sort of compute, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
They'd just sort of think, play the safe card, follow the kind of traditional path.
Yeah, obviously I look at it in a very benign way, and I cherish those memories from the 70s of being small and my mushies, and I think I just write this novel to which would be called The Surrender, because it's also about my surrender, or what I'm not there yet, but to surrender is when you really accept the higher force. And it's difficult. I'm mixed race, but it's difficult for the Western mind to surrender in the same way that someone who's born in Eastern culture can. We're more individualistic and
and not at all spiritual.
I don't know. I think there's a lot of spirituality here. There's a lot of spirituality in Europe. I think Scandinavians are quite interesting, actually.
Really?
In that respect. Yeah, maybe it's the light. I'm not sure what it is, but I think there's a lot of spiritual potential in Europe. I think there's more there than there is in Asia at the moment.
Really?
I think, because we've look how many people are into yoga. Yeah, that's also a bit ambiguous, because you get, I think where yoga's gone wrong in the West on the whole is that people are obsessed with the beautiful body.
Yeah.
Whereas yoga's about the acquisition of a beautiful mind, and the beautiful body is incidental.
Yeah.
And that hasn't really come through enough here. I'd say yoga's more about getting fit and looking good and,
posing on Instagram.
rather than actually selflessness, which is the goal of yoga. When you extinguish the self, that hasn't happened yet.
No.
But at least people are attracted to that philosophy. But you go to Calcutta, it's very rare to find anyone who does yoga. Okay, Calcutta, the Bengalis are particularly unspiritual, actually. It's interesting in Bengal, because so many of the spiritual greats of India have come from Bengal, because they're the intellectuals and artists of India. But
is that where you based yourself?
Well, that's where I'm from. I'm half Bengali.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, so I went to Calcutta. I based myself very deeply in Calcutta.
Did you feel like you'd come home?
Yeah. No. I at first I wanted to feel that. I really wanted to feel it. But as the years went by, I realised that actually I'm a Londoner, much more than I'm someone from Calcutta. This is where I've got my work. This is where I've got my love. Like I can walk. I see it all this. I get it all the time. I walk around and people, hey man, it's you. How's it going? And I saw Rico yesterday from Roll Deep. I saw him at the bus stop and just had a hug with him.
Nice.
Rico's one of the great YMCs. Very underrated. I see some people saw a couple of days ago. Someone from one of the youth clubs saw me and big smile and just gave me a hug. It's lovely. I never get that in Calcutta. It's not that I need adulation. That's not what it's about. It's just about a feeling of belonging. And I belong much more here than in India, where, in Calcutta particularly, where I felt very alienated. And I used to feel alienated in England. That's why I've always run away. Always.
Yeah.
I went to live in Budapest, I went to live in Amsterdam, I went to India, and even like in Magnum, I didn't fit into the London office. I was fine in Paris.
Yeah.
And I was fine in the New York office, but particularly Paris. I was very, very comfortable in the Paris office with the photographers there. In London, I wasn't comfortable at all. London was like, it reminded me of going back to boarding school. I went to Amsterdam to get out of, to get all that shit out of my system, all that inferiority complex, all that hierarchy which had been like embedded in me from, which is, I suppose, you could say corrupted me from boarding school.
The elitism and not feeling like you belong.
Just this feeling that someone's always like above you and issuing orders and stuff.
That's London, isn't it?
And that's boarding school. You have these years and they have these prefects and monitors, and you live with them you live with them 24 hours a day, and Oh God! And then I remember, like, even at Magnum in London, the managing director of the office when I was there, she was a carbon copy of the matron I had at prep school.
Oh.
She would. I used to see her, and I used to think of that matron who was really scary. So yeah, that's what Magnum was. It's a bit like going back to boarding school, and I didn't really react very well to that situation. But I still got friends there, and I still have a lot of love for some of the photographers there, and I always will do, and I'll always be part of them in a way.
Yeah, it's something you carry along with you.
Yeah, because my influences, I've got 3 influencers in photography, and 2 of them, one of them is still with Magnum, the other one left the year that I joined. And of course Philip Jones Griffiths, who was my mentor, and the person that really was, I suppose, my Magnum experience, was the greatest photojournalist of all time, probably, in terms of making a book that really mattered, and that was Vietnamic.
When you're kind of writing and you're remembering all these memories of your childhood, do you really sort of get transported back there? Can you sort of remember the way the sun glints off things?
Sister, sorry, I keep calling you sister. Absolutely.
You can call me bruv.
That's why I write, I think. I write because I want to see that glint of sun again in my life.
I can almost picture it the way you've described it, only very briefly. I get a sense of orange hues and like golden hour and,
TikTok me.
Yeah, I do. Absolutely. And smiling faces.
And just love and warmth and
humanity.
And just like this, I think, communalism as well. Is that the word, or is that a bad word, communalism? Does that mean that you're going to start fighting each other? Do you know what I mean? It does also mean that, doesn't it? But this sense of just being together and communal living, and this is what I found like very interesting as well with the West and the East is that we're not good here at communal living. I mean, even this idea that we get to 21 and we've got to go and live out on our own, or 18 and move out, and I think it's really sad because it's so precious having time with your parents.
It really is. I went on a holiday with them recently and I just forgot how much I love being with them, even though they, partly drive me mad, and I'm sure I drive them mad. It was just very precious. They'd booked rooms next to ours so they could just sort of lean over the balcony. It was just a sort of humble holiday in Spain, but it just meant the world to me. It was the break we all needed. And my dad would be leaning over and saying, how do I get the football on the iPad to my husband? And, just very mundane, pointless things like that. But you just know that at some point that is going to break your heart as you look back on that memory and remember the sea and remember your mum laughing and the sound of her voice. I think that's what I get from you talking about that time, all of these people, the smiles and the kind of conversations you might have had. I sense with you that you have a real love of people and their stories and what makes them them. And to be a photographer and to be a storyteller, whether through visual or words or film, which I think you're going to be venturing more and more into, you hinted. It's just, I think it's probably the meaning that you've found. I might be sort of putting words into your head there, but
you're absolutely hitting the nail on the head, because I could stop photography tomorrow if I found a better medium in which to tell my stories. And that's what I'm doing. Actually, now I'm more of a filmmaker now. What I found, I still do photography. Obviously, I've got my my position at Abbey Road, and I'm busy with music, photography. I've got shoots this week, and but my personal work now is more about writing a film. That's where I'm at, because I want to go deeper. I think photography is not a very good way of telling a story. Now, retrospectively, it's interesting to look back at these photography projects that have accumulated and make a story out of the photographs I've made and stitch them together. To me, making a book is like making a film. I think to go out and shoot photographs with a view to making a book, I always tell my participants, don't think like that. You're not going to make good work.
Sure.
Ambition is corrupting. Don't do that. You go and photograph a book. A good book should be a retrospective analysis in which you make sense of your experience.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing, at least, and it's how I feel. But photography, there's no beginning and no end. I think a good photograph, really, the best photographs, most interesting photographs, are when you don't really know what's happening, where it's a bit of ambiguity, a bit of mystery. Okay, that's what makes it interesting.
Yeah.
Now imagine, you know how it is. You've been to films. You've come out of the cinema. You've turned it off, and you don't really know what happened.
No.
Those are really unsatisfying films.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Very much so. And then you ask other people, what did you think happened
And
there?
they don't know either.
No.
Or they do, maybe. Maybe they were high. I don't know. And they've come up with some
Maybe.
interpretation.
Yeah.
But you get it. So I think that as someone who loves narrative as much as I do, that's really why I do what I do, why I've done what I've done. Then I remember when I was leaving Magnum as well, Alex Soph was sitting with me in the cafe in Paris, and he said, well, he said, yeah, someone like you, he said, you should be, photography is never going to do it for you. He said, because you're so into narrative that you need to be either writing novels or making films. And that's
very
where
intuitive.
I'm going. But what I love photography. For me, photography is like sport. I love it. I love, especially with my old cameras, getting them out and making, dare I say, perfect pictures, or pursuing that ideal of perfection with my camera. And it's sport for me. I love it, and I find it so relaxing. And again, my time in India, my time in Hong Kong, particularly when I was in India, I was going to Hong Kong to do workshops, Hong Kong, China, and I was exposed to Taoism as philosophy and doing some Tai Chi, and realizing the simplicity of photography when I apply that philosophy to my practice, and how you just don't need to try. Photography, it's so easy. You don't need to try. It's not like making a film. You got to think of audio levels and this and that, and oh God, editing it, and when do you cut? When do you stop filming? And you always stop filming just when something's going to happen somehow. Documentary film. I much prefer making documentary photographs, documentary film.
Yeah.
Though I'd like to direct a documentary where I've got another team and I can just keep my eye on it, or rather than doing a self-shooting one like I've done. But what was I going to say? I was going to finish this sentence somehow with Anyway, I'd like to make feature films if I could.
Yeah.
I'd forgotten what I was going to say, but let's stop there.
It was
that
lovely
subject.
listening to you talk so passionately about taking photographs and how that was kind of just really easy.
Yeah. What I was going to say is that that's my relaxation. Photography now has become my
okay.
relaxation. That's what I was going to say.
Like a meditation.
It is. Photography is meditation, and that's why, in my workshops, also I've got a class tonight with some of my students. Where I cannot teach photography,
right?
But I can teach capoeira Angola, the Brazilian martial art, which I've integrated with some like yoga breathing exercises. And I did this in Calcutta when I had a lot of time. My wife was very ill, actually. I won't go into that. Yeah, so I had a lot of time and dealing with that. Yeah, I learned everything I know about life in the last 5 years, I think.
Gosh.
I think so. The main lessons.
Yeah.
When your back's against the wall with a situation, a life and death situation, and you've got a daughter who's 4, going on 5, and she's probably going to lose her mother, and you're dealing with that situation as I was, and miraculously that didn't happen. But yeah, then you realize a few things in life.
What was the biggest sort of thing that you took away from that experience?
I would say that the biggest lesson is that if you have time to think about something, it's not a problem.
It's very wise. Very wise. I feel like we could potentially, that's really floored me. So then in that respect, nothing really kind of matters that much.
And I think in this very neurotic society that we now live in, people have a tendency to make small problems into bigger problems by thinking about them.
Whereas actually, if
you have got a problem, if you've really got a problem and you're trying to deal with it that's your life. You haven't got time to think about it. Then it's a problem. Otherwise, it's just a little kind of mental issue you've got.
Yeah, exactly. Something that can be completely overlooked. Do you want some water?
Do you know who that is? That's
that?
the bass player in the Asian Dub Foundation.
Oh my God, I'm so jealous. I'm a massive fan.
Yeah, I know. You said yesterday, and that's where my music's led me, in fact. I should have picked it up and talked to him and told him I'm here.
Oh, you should have done it.
Should I do that?
I can say hello. Oh my goodness.
Jamil. Yo, I'm in the podcast, and this person I'm with at the moment, she asked me to pick it up. We're recording, and I'm going to put you on speaker. Hang on. Jamil, she's a big fan of the Asian Dub Foundation. She's from Manchester.
Hello.
Hello.
So here you are.
Oh my goodness, I'm going all fangirl.
Wow.
What podcast are we on now?
It's called Creative Boom. Check it out, Instagram, Creative Boom.
Wow.
Creative Boom.
Yeah, so I'll call you in a bit. Where are you? Are you in the studio?
I'm in Status Row headquarters in Farringdon.
Cool.
I was calling for about me, you and Steve, and if you chatted to him.
Yeah. I'll drop by. I can drop by on the way back. Okay, I'm on my bike. I'll see you in a bit, yeah? I'll call you.
All right, see you in a bit, bro.
All right, nice.
All right, love.
Okay, bye.
Oh my goodness, that was wonderful.
Yeah, so I started collaborating with them musically now.
Oh,
as
amazing.
well because what I found in India was that after a while that photography was something that I love doing it, but that love had been, I suppose, compromised by the streets of India being, I think, too, should we say, social mediaized, or so too much Facebook, Instagram, and just, I would say also Bollywood, because I think all over the world people become a bit stupid nowadays because of this selfie culture. But in India, it's on another level, and I think that is the Bollywood factor, where everyone wants to. There's the star, the whole concept of a star, celebrity in India is so massive. Yeah.
Wow.
Like they can do whatever they want. Here, if you talk to David Beckham or someone, he has to answer the media. He has to stand up and they might ridicule him, but they wouldn't dare ridicule a star in India. They'd shout at the journalist and walk out.
Wow.
Yeah.
It can be real divas.
That's what would happen. They just walk up and say, "Don't talk to me like that."
Gosh.
And get out. Yeah. Which may again go to caste system and all that, I'm not sure. But that hierarchical society, I don't know if that's part of it, but that is the case. And I think it was 2017, it was a year after my mother passed away, and I had tired of photographing the streets. In the end, having a child and wanting to be with her, I found that for the previous 5 years, all my work in India shot at nighttime, and I'd focus on not that I wanted to shoot at night, but after the first couple of trips there, I found the pictures at night had more resonance. And I think that chimed with what I was feeling over there, that we were in a very dark age of materialism. And those pictures had more resonance. So I would be very attracted to this like pink, green, blue, red light around festivals. You see it in the nightclubs too, because I had connections in fashion and film. So I had access to those areas. Parties, and I went along. I used to hate going to those parties. I'd go there just to photograph them. I found them very fake. And the streets, I just got tired of it. Everybody was just behaving like an idiot when I got the camera out. So I had enough, and I just preferred to stay home and do a jigsaw with my daughter. Oh. And it would have been the 1 year anniversary of my mother's passing, and I'd already started making music on like GarageBand and stuff like that. But I wanted to learn an instrument, so I went and found, through someone I knew, a true teacher of Indian classical music, and he looked at my hand and he gave me the sarod to play, not the sitar, the sarod, which is a fretless instrument with sliding strings.
Beautiful.
And so now I'm collaborating with him in London and making music.
That's beautiful. That's something that you've basically, Gosh, to be honest, I'm still reeling from saying hello. I was like, hi. Went back to being sort of 15 again in, the 90s and going and seeing them, God knows where. I think I saw them about 4 or 5 times. But anyway, I'm going to shut up before I embarrass myself even more. One of the things I wanted to ask you was, did you find that the camera was a really good kind of prop for going to like parties or going to things with lots of people, so that you could just sort of almost hide behind it and be yourself?
You know me, don't you, already?
Well, maybe because I see a
so.
bit of myself.
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah.
When I started, certainly it was, I was very insecure when I was in my early 20s. And
Yeah.
the camera just gave me a reason to be around. And I had a friend, of course, and I had a toy as well. Camera to me has always been a bit of a toy, as well as being sport. Sport's a pastime, isn't it? It's frivolous.
Yeah.
So even though I was serious in my subject matter, there's something very frivolous about me, which is maybe why I've managed to get into certain areas like the French banlieue and the impossible story of the Moroccans, or even the grime generation and some of the rougher edges of that I've seen. But yeah, it always gave me a reason to be somewhere. And as I've got older and more confident about myself, then I don't necessarily feel that anymore. I can just be somewhere and I think meditation is important. You can always meditate. You can always, however uncomfortable a situation might be, is just switch your mind off and just focus on your breathing.
Am I getting a lesson right now?
I'm not a guru. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I learned that you just kind of acknowledged your thoughts as kind of, this kind of stuff that's floating around in your head, and you just imagine a train going in one ear and going out the other and carrying it all away. So that's how I sort of do my meditation. But, ridiculous as it sounds, I've just always been so busy. And I don't allow myself that time to do more of that. I find meditation in writing, or switching off and doing a bit of yoga at the end of a long day. But yeah, I feel like I need to go away now and sort of really get into that. I think it would be beneficial for not just me, but anybody listening to this who've never really sort of gone down that path. Too spiritual. Yeah, I don't know what I'm saying. I'll shut up.
No, it's good. You are very naturally that way inclined, I think, as well.
I'm myself. I can't be anything else. I can't put up a front or a wall or, I'm very vulnerable. I like to be vulnerable because I feel like with these podcasts, if I was trying to be something I'm not, then I wouldn't sort of get these great conversations where we both open up. So I have to show a little bit of myself to be able to sort of get people to warm and share their stories. So I think in that respect, if you done that yourself, would you say, because you're doing it to me right now by looking at me, which I think is very powerful, but getting people to open up and tell their stories through your kind of work, has that been something you've learned, or are you just very naturally, inquisitive?
Yeah, I think so. I think I've always been very inquisitive about things. And yeah, I think you have to be if you want to tell stories. Yeah. Your own stories.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And you said when you first came here and you were at that boarding school in Surrey, was it?
Surrey was later. I started in Buckinghamshire because we were living in Singapore. And now I should say I don't really come from that demographic. It's like my father worked for a company that his dad died in the war. He had no money. I've read the letters he sent. He got a place at Christ Hospital, which is like a charity boarding school. I read the letters he'd sent to his mother from there, and getting a few shillings here and there to get something. He'd thank his mother. But he worked in Singapore, and they paid my school fees.
Wow!
So they'd pay me fly 3 times a year to London and back, and get my school fees. And so he put me in a school near Heathrow, and because his work was that on the west side of London, just out to Brentford area, and people who put me up at weekends when we could go back like one weekend each side of half term were his old associates from work who lived in that area, and their children didn't go to private school, and he'd been on the same salary as them in the UK.
Gosh.
So it's only because of that that trip abroad that I had that privilege in my life. But it's something I know that I talk about it a bit, and sometimes what happens with journalists is they go in on that too hard, and I got really annoyed about, never do an interview on a dark, late November day because you're going to be miserable. I've learned never do it. If you do a November interview, do it in the morning. Don't do it in the afternoon. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't.
It's February for me.
Trust me. Yeah. February is a bit brighter.
Do you
it's cold.
think?
It's cold, but at least the afternoons every day is a little bit brighter. But
that's
November, you're on the
true.
downward slope. Late November, it's getting darker and darker and darker. It's getting colder, and there's no end in sight. February doesn't end in sight. There really is. You're almost in March. Clock's going to change soon. Anyway, so I do talk about that, but people make too much of it because I had a really good time as well, especially at my second school, my charter house. It was hard at first. It really was because that hierarchy. But by the time I was in the sixth form, when I was playing in the school football team, I was in the first 11. So that's a big deal at these kind of schools when you're in the first team.
Definitely.
And they gave me a lot of confidence, and I started to find myself a bit more. And I was doing Spanish A-levels, so I was going off to Spain for language trips, falling in love with Spanish girls and having a great time.
Sounds ideal.
Yeah, look, I suddenly realized, but Spain was great because that's why when people say where you're from, I would say, well, I like to think that I've got a Latin exterior. I'm Simon Limon, as you know. University in Brazil, Capoeira, how I kind of find my movements after I kind of free myself from the whole boarding school experience with Capoeira. But I like to think I've got I'm developing a Sanskrit core, my inner being, but my outer expression is very much Latin. And Spain was very important for that as an A-level Spanish student, and going for holidays and getting out of boarding school and realizing, wow, people are actually quite nice. People are really nice. The girls are nice. I found the English girls really stuck up at my school, and I was a bit of an oddball. I wasn't going to get anywhere with them anyway. But Spain had a field day.
Brilliant. They're a bit more laid back over there and a bit more colourful.
And I know they liked me, and I think possibly because I've got that strong feminine side to me as well. And with my generation of Spanish girls are very interesting because they're definitely on a revenge. They're definitely on some kind of I wouldn't say revenge, but they've got a very kind of pointed energy about them, put it that way, because I think when the rest of Europe and the West were going through women's liberation and stuff, they were locked into a dictatorship in a very macho society. And so my generation are coming back strong from that. So yeah, the relationship didn't last all that long.
But you're smiling, so good memories again.
Yeah, 100.
Yeah. So being an outsider...
Not 100 memories, maybe five or six.
Yeah, okay.
But 100%.
You weren't that bad.
Yeah.
So you felt like an outsider in England at these schools. I've read in other interviews and things. Has it, have you realised that being an outsider has actually worked in your favour then?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean, how can I find a way to give thanks for that destiny that I've had from being the oddball and not fitting in and being able to do what I've done? I don't know how to express thanks for that.
Do any of us feel like we belong?
I don't know. Probably a lot of people do. People who, a friend of mine who's 20 years younger, and he went to Tunbridge, and the other day and he's a bit different. He is a musician and works in a bookshop in Dalston, and he's a painter as well. He went to Lord's, and he found himself with someone from his old school, and they were with a bunch of other people who had been at Tunbridge, and you had there's actually a Tunbridge player in the England side at the moment, Zach Crawley. And there were people who were 30 years older than him. And he said they'd never left school.
Good grief. They'd never moved on.
Yeah. And so people like that are probably comfortable in themselves with the horizons that come about. But maybe, I don't know, you're comfortable in yourself. I suppose, by now. I mean, there's
Oh,
still
yeah.
moments. We still have moments of doubt.
I'm still human. I still have
Yeah.
crashes and burns, but for the most part, I feel very kind of lucky to be here still at 43, and to have come out of some of the experiences I've had, which I won't go into on record, but some pretty horrible things as well. But I think you have to, as you've said, you have to go back, don't you? You have to sort of understand your own story a little bit more, and sort of where you come from and your family and all of the experiences you've been through before you can sort of get to that stage. I feel you have to really sort of look deeply within and figure yourself out. And I think for you, it's come about from traveling and meeting people and seeing all these different perspectives. Would you say that's right? Would you say travel's helped with that, or meditation as well, obviously?
Meditation is a form of travel. Meditation's not easy because
No, it's not.
Like when you really go, when you let go, like I guess our worries are also a source of comfort in that we're familiar with our worries. And when you let go and you meditate and you fly away, then you got to be ready to fly, to float like that. And it's, meditation is definitely an adventure.
So what's on the horizon for you then?
Trying to be a good dad.
That's very grounding.
Trying to make sure that my daughter can respect her mother and her mother's culture. Come over to England, she's 10, and I would like to have kept in India a couple more years to ground her further in the yogic ways of my wife's family. She's a born yogi. I met her in an ashram, and my daughter's now in school here. I put her in a private school to start with, just because I wanted to give her a softer landing coming back to England at 9. Lockdown forced the issue. I'd like to have kept her longer in India, but and I see this like selfishness coming in, and I see some of what she's going through. I know exactly what she's going through because I've been through, and she's an only child. So, and she always will be because of my wife's illness, and sadly. So it's not, that's the biggest challenge for me at the moment, really. Work's easy. I just have to take a camera and make pictures, and I've got so many like books to put out there of work I've done. I've got all these ideas for films and stuff that I'm working on, that I just need to find time and focus to do that. But my daughter's 10, and it's a very crucial age to ensure that she takes the best of the West rather than the worst of it, and retains her Indian, the deeper Indian being that my wife's family represents. And that's a big challenge, very big challenge.
Very big challenge, especially when you're thinking of all these kind of wonderful stories and people, and seeing, what they've been through, how that, the harshness, I suppose, of life, the struggle. Can you kind of protect a child from that, though? And is a little bit of struggle and harsh reality, good for the soul, good for creativity, good for self-development?
I'm trying to get that across to her. She started, and came in and was being bullied straight away by a girl. My daughter has, I don't want to be one of these like dickhead parents who say, "Oh, I know," but she is quite good at music. Say she plays sitar, and she's a bit of a prodigy in sitar. She doesn't practice enough, and it's not a very easy instrument to play, as you want to go and mess about with your friends at that age. But she's good, and recently she did a recital at school and for the assembly, and 2 of the teachers were in tears afterwards, the music teacher and the French teacher brought her in. And of course there's a choir and someone who just turned up is suddenly doing the solos. And obviously she's had to knock someone off their perch who'd been doing it for 4 or 5 years. And
that
so
hierarchy again.
Yeah, so she's having to deal with all of this and putting up with bullying and I'm having to spend a lot of time with her to let her understand that you've got to go through this and it's all part of your character development. And hopefully the lessons that I've learned I can impart. So I'm grateful for that element of my destiny too, that although I made a lot of mistakes, people say, do you have regrets? And, I don't have regrets. That people say, but come on, man. It's easy to say I don't have regrets. Yes, let's be grateful for where we are. But I like to think I'd have done some things differently in life. And I've got the opportunity to pass those lessons on to my daughter.
Okay. Well, I feel like we're running over time and I could literally sit with you all day and pick your brains and learn about how to be a better meditator. But I think we're going to have to wrap that up there.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming. If you'd like to learn more about Simon Wheatley, you can find everything you need in our show notes via creativeboom.com/podcast. That's where you can also hit subscribe and enjoy future episodes with us. Thanks again to our sponsor, Astropad Studio, the ultimate iPad app for professional artists. If you're ready to take your creative workflow to the next level, you can start your 30-day free trial of Astropad Studio today. Plus save 10% on your first year when you enter the promo code BOOM at checkout. Go to astropad.com to get started. That's it for now. Season 4 is complete. We've loved every minute, especially being back with people in real life. Thank you so much for listening. Season 5 is already underway with a whole load of exciting new guests. We'll be back very soon. Until then, have a great summer.